Thank you all so much for joining another episode of Celeste the Therapist podcast. My name is Celeste. I'm a therapist from Boston, Mass. And I have a special regular guest who I'm going to have him introduce himself to you all.
Hi, I'm Jermaine Morris. I work as a certified coach and consultant with a practice that's based around a DISC assessment. So basically, we use a test to kind of gauge how an individual deals with problems, how they interact with people, communication styles, how they deal with systems, how they operate in their natural, which is who they are just naturally in the world, and then their adaptive of who they become under stress or under pressure.
Thank you for sharing that.
Yeah.
And for the people that have questions about the DISC assessment, we did a whole podcast episode on it, which is really great. And I'll make sure to link that into the show notes so that if you're ever thinking about it, a really good tool to give you kind of a baseline on yourself, especially if you're trying to name it. I think naming things can be extremely powerful. It just I always say, like, if you go to the doctor and the doctor can't tell you what's going on, you're gonna struggle until you figure it out. And I think the same is for our individual selves. I think we struggle until we figure it out.
Yeah, and it works as a really good, if nothing else, it's a diagnostic.
hmm
So the whole premise I work under is self-awareness without judgment. So we don't go
hmm
into it with the premise of if it's right or wrong, good or bad. We
Yeah,
just get a good base of what is, and
yeah,
then go from there.
yeah. And people who are becoming more self-aware, whether it's through this podcast, therapy, learning through situations. Sometimes it actually sometimes traumatic things happen before people start to recognize some things. And my goal is for it not to. You have to wait till your back's against the wall before you become aware.
Yeah,
But even with people understanding themselves and what they may need or their wants or their goals, people will still struggle with validation around those things if it's not looking the same on the outside, if their family aren't wanting it for them, or if the environment, even just the neighborhood or whatever socioeconomic class you grew up in. I think environment plays a huge factor in um, creating like who we are. But then when we become an adult and become self-aware, we understand, and trying to align yourself with your goals is challenging when the world is not in alignment. Do you think that's accurate?
yeah, definitely. In the environment part, you know, what is it? The nature versus nurture stuff. So part of it is
Mm,
the innate stuff that's in us. The other part are the external factors that help guide or shift whatever that is. And so if your external factor is, if by nature you're naturally a fit person, by nature you have a fast metabolism, by nature you have a body's easy to process food and burn fat by nature, but you live in a family that all they serve is deep fried Oreos and Twinkies for breakfast. It's a matter of time before environment catches up
right.
to who to the same accord, that even if we're on our square and doing our best and trying to be self-aware and develop the life we want, if we've immersed ourselves in a culture and a community that is always negative, or that is always got a problem for every solution, or just vehemently disagrees with the way we see the world, like they just know it needs to be like this, and if it's not like this, you're wrong. um, that can start to wear at us, because though that friction, they say, was it pressure makes diamonds, and you polish something beautifully by sanding it down with something rough. The same premise goes for, if you have an idea and you keep going against the grain enough, you can file down your dreams for yourself, and file down your own ambitions and goals, because you all that resistance you just kept going against. So sometimes we need to get around people who are going the same way. you know Everything does not have to be a struggle and a fight. And so sometimes when we're looking to do different with our lives, or to validate what we already believe, enough friction can be disheartening, and then that can be very discouraging.
Yeah, you're right. It can. I'm thinking about like family and friends, but also you said something about going in the direction and changing it. I can only imagine how hard it is to be thinking you're going on the right track, or even just knowing that one road and having to like really rework and go back to the drawing board and go in a different direction. Why do you think that's hard for people to change the course of action when they recognize they're not on the right track?
Uh, for familiarity,
Yeah,
comfortability.
yeah.
Um, I'm a firm believer. I say comfortability is a snitch. Um, so comfortability, I don't even know if that's even actually a word, but I would just say that I say the
Well,
comfortability.
for the purposes of the podcast, it is. I
Yeah,
say that a lot, but I don't think it's a real
I
word.
don't
I
know.
don't
Merriam-Webster and
know.
all there may disagree. Words are only used for communication, and if you can understand what I'm saying, then it's an effective word. But yeah, I just say comfortability is a snitch. When you find yourself in a degree of comfort, comfort actually exposes, you know, everything. It exposes what you'll truly tolerate. It exposes how hard you really will fight for something, what you really care about, your true intentions. All that stuff comes out when you're comfortable. So if you're trying to go against the grain, that's when you find out, is this really what you want? So if you've been living a life a certain way and now all of a sudden you want to change course, once that opposition hits you, now you're no longer comfortable. So do you really want this or not? And there are a lot of people who will choose comfort over that goal or that dream because it's going to be hard. It's going to be, you may not get supported in your household. You may not be supported by your mate. You may be in a community or environment that don't rock with your new ways of seeing or doing. So there will be people who just kind of fold under the pressure, and they fall back into what they know, even if it's not the devil, even if it's not the best environment for you. You'll realize that I would rather be in this space that's maybe not best for me, but that I know it, rather than venture out there by myself. And then that's where, say, what comfortability is a snitch. Okay, so the true you would rather, okay, you ain't about that life. You really ain't trying to change. It just sounded good in the moment. Like, okay, the real you is just is not going to do it like that. Um, but I think for some of us, when you get out there, then that's all the other side of the coin, is it shows when we do really do want to change. When we get out of like, no, I know there's nobody eating vegetables here. I'm gonna walk to the farmer's market by myself. I'm gonna cook these carrots and peas and eat them by myself. I'm going to be ridiculed because I don't want the fried Oreos and the Twinkies, and everybody's gonna make fun of me or whatever, whatever. But I'm still going to do that by myself, because being healthy and eating that way or living that way is truly me, and I'm willing to deal with whatever that comes with that. So the same way that it'll snitch to see if you ain't about that life, it will snitch to show if you are.
Yeah, that's good, and I know that. I mean, the food example is really great, and even I like using myself as an example. Deciding to go to school for mental health and get extremely involved in this world of mental health was definitely a road that I was on by myself. It wasn't people that was like, "Oh yeah, that sounds good," because it's like back in like 2014, 2013,
Right,
before people really like in our community kind of really acknowledge therapy or mental health for the connections.
right,
So I'll say for people like it was definitely fulfilling because I felt like I was fulfilling my purpose. Lonely, like there was a mixture of emotions that came with the process. Tell people a little bit about that part, because I think sometimes we only think of one emotion, like if we're starting something, we're just supposed to be happy about it, or but you can actually hold more than one emotions, especially when you're talking about transition and change.
yeah, definitely. And so also a firm believer in um, two things can also be true. So instead of it's and as opposed to or. So I can love all y'all and still not want to be around you. I can appreciate all your opinions and your views and information and not follow any of it. Um, I can go out on my own path to live my own purpose and be upset and feel alone that nobody is here supporting me or doing it with me. So those conflicting emotions of, I feel proud of myself because I'm really working at this and I'm going to school and I'm, maybe I'm 6 years on this 2-year degree, but I'm still chipping away at it. And I also feel kind of failurish because I'm on year 6 for a 2-year degree, and I still feel behind because I'm in class with everybody who's, 5, 6, 7, 10 years younger than me. I feel like two things can exist at the same time. So when we start to make those shifts, it doesn't mean that it's always going to be okay. Like I said, yeah, yes, I'm happy that I'm eating the vegetables, that I'm being, trying to be healthy, and I feel upset because I'm sitting at the table by myself. It's not always going to be an easy going, easy flowing process, but then that's where you decide what's more important to me, and then that's where the snitch comes out. You find out what's really more important to you.
Yeah. That's good. And, I like the because you just said it, the 6 years and a 2-year program. I think about, like, how, just because we become aware doesn't mean, like, we're gonna change everything right away, right? It could take time. It could take I need to take a pause, life is happening, and come back to it. Like the example of, like, finishing a 2-year degree. I admire people that are able to go back and, kind of chip away at these things despite what's happening or trying to incorporate it into their life. So for people that are listening, just because you may need to take a pause doesn't mean that you're not going anywhere, right? Would
Yeah.
you say would you say that's kind of accurate?
I think the biggest misconception is that people believe whatever you're doing that you're standing still, and that's just not true. So even if you take every human being walks out, just wherever you are in the world, if you just stop and just stand like planking, you just stand in a straight line, stand like a light post. The Earth is rotating on its axis at all times. So even when you think you're standing still, you're still moving. So to people who believe that, well, I haven't gotten further in school, why? Well, because I was working these jobs and I was raising these kids. Okay, you're still moving because you're raising children and you're still going to work and interacting with different people and sharpening your skill set or getting other opportunities. Like you're never actually stuck. And so the belief that I'm standing still is just fundamentally and rudimentarily not true. And so that's one mentality to kind of shift out of for some of us because we think that okay, I'm going back to school. I'm going to be the oldest person in class. I'm closer to age to the teacher than I am the student sitting next to me. And so we get discouraged and we think that, oh, I haven't done anything with my life, or maybe I've been raising kids. I haven't worked in 10 years. Now I'm coming back. And we diminish our value and contribution in our lifetime because it doesn't hit a certain chart. We didn't work a specific job, we didn't get specific credits or specific certification, so we think that we've done nothing with our lives, and that's not true.
Yeah, so you know what's coming up for me as you are talking about things not holding a certain chart or people who think they're standing still. I think about the systems that we live in. We live. It's most of my listeners are in America, and we live in a system where you are brought up thinking that things are supposed to be a certain way, and we've done this like months ago on what's supposed to be. You
Yeah.
and I did a podcast on this, but I think about when we understand the systems, whether it's American system, whether it's our family systems, and what was taught to us on what life was supposed to be like. If we can like work on challenging it, releasing that mindset, it can really help us not beat ourselves up so much about where we currently are in life because we are where we are, and we cannot do anything and time still passes, or we can do something with the time that's passing.
Definitely. Yeah, the idea of supposed to and should. I would say that should is an expectation wrapped in a judgment that usually leads to disappointment. That the idea of, well, I was supposed to have graduated by 22. Was that written on the backside of your birth certificate? Where we get these ideas of like, I'm supposed to be married by 25. I'm supposed to have bought my first house before 30. I was supposed like, I missed that part. I didn't read the full terms and conditions when I was born that said that this is the schedule that I
I
was supposed to stick to.
Well, when they say that, I'll say, "Oh, where? Who said it? Where is it at?" And then they
That's
just like they just stop. because you don't really think deeply about it. All you know is you have these fixated beliefs, and
Yeah.
when it doesn't go according to plan, you start to be like, and when you're challenging that fixated belief, that's when you're like, well, I don't know, isn't that what everybody else is doing?
Yeah, yeah, that's really where that stuff comes from. Well, why am I supposed to be married and I'm 27? Well, your sister's married at 23. Okay, so maybe instead of I was supposed to be married by now, maybe she was supposed to wait. Like who's to say that who with this should we attach to everything? You should have figured your life out by now. Once again, where's the fortune cookie I didn't read? Like, where does it say that this is this? And so when we have these ideas that when we get caught up in should land, I say should land is a very highly populated place with a bunch of miserable people. And so when we get caught up on should land, we diminish what we've done with our lives. We reduce our self-worth down to a quantifiable gauge based upon somebody else's narrative.
And a
So
narrative that and a system that wasn't even designed for.
exactly, someone else's. And we'll say that our life is valuable or not. Our presence is valid or not based upon this fictitious gauge that literally has nothing to do with us as an individual. So when you use that as the litmus test for what you're doing with your life, you've almost guaranteed yourself to be unhappy.
I like that, and because you said this is the second time you said. I just want you to expound on the part about because we diminish our value
Yeah.
if it's not a degree, a house, a car, you know, those kind of like
Yeah.
things.
Quantifiable, these tangible kind of
Yeah,
things.
get taught. It's for people that may feel a pull when you said that, like when and maybe they recognize, like, man, I have raised these kids, or I have been able to make a way out of no way. Can you talk to those people so they can think about things a little bit differently?
Yeah. So there's no grade. Like when we're in school, A, B, C, D, E, F. There is no grade for your life. Like outside of what you feel you've done with it. So if you feel like I'm not living up to my potential, I'm not doing the things that I want to do, I'm just really living a life I'm not happy with, okay, then start making some adjustments and some corrections. If you feel like your life is not owning up because you think somebody else, you're not holding up to somebody else's scorecard, that's the issue. So to some people, so raising children, there are a lot of people who diminish that to, oh, she's just a stay-at-home mom or he's just a stay-at-home dad. Oh, like, oh, you mean helping to raise healthy, solid individuals who are going to go on to the world and be the decision makers for how this planet operates in the future? It's kind of a big deal, you know. Oh, she's just a school teacher. Oh, he's just a whatever. You mean like we have value to what we're doing, and what we're doing. Um, Everybody looks at like the colony. Like if you're not the queen, then you're nothing. Like people say, like bees, it's like there's a queen bee, then we reduce everybody else to just drones. You just this whatever. Here's the deal: if the drones don't do what they do, the colony collapses and nothing goes on. The drones, quote unquote, drones have value. You know, it's more often than not, checkmates are established with the use of the pawn. So people think of all these other, pieces that do all this, and they think the pawns is just the the menial. That's these chess players. I tell you, some of the most sophisticated checkmate moves are used with the use of the pawn is in play. So even if you're not doing something that's huge and dramatic, you're not selling out on tour. There's no jersey with your name on the back. Like you're not doing something that you think is, quote unquote special. Everything that you're doing, your existence, and I think that's something that we don't speak of human beings the way we speak of nature and biology, but human beings have an ecosystem just like anything else. And when you alter an ecosystem, it alters the entire ecosystem. That's why they don't want you taking down rainforests or pumping certain stuff into habitats, because when you kill off, we talk about the bees, when the bees die, then it changes all the pollination of all the other fruits and stuff. Your sheer existence affects the ecosystem in which you work. So the job that you work at, the children that you raise, the neighbor that you are, the sister that you are, the daughter that you are, the son that you are, the husband that you are, your sheer existence affects the ecosystem that you have created around you. So you are never not doing anything. You're never irrelevant. Your sheer presence is value. And so I think that when we diminish what we are and what we do to a how much money do you make a year? we drastically diminish our experience and the effect that we have in the time that we're here.
Yeah, that's really good. And we just have to understand, um, that if there's things about our life that we're not content with, think about what is it going to look like to work on change.
Yeah.
And you'll be surprised. There's a lot of things that you are doing well, and there may be some things you want to work on, but until you stop and like really challenge yourself, it's going to be hard. But I've never talked about that on here. This idea of, the way we diminish our being. If it's not a standard of society, then we don't recognize just how amazing we are.
Yeah.
But we have to be the ones to pick that out, because society's not going to remind us of that, right? This
Right.
has to be an intentional process of you being aware of your value, despite what has happened or despite what is going on around the world. Looking at your value is important.
Yes. And I think something that can help is, so most of us as an adult, when we think back to our childhood and growing up, there were people in our lives, or maybe a person that was a fork in the road. You know, it was that teacher we had, it was that coach, it was that neighbor, that aunt, that cousin, that grandma, somebody that said something on one particular time. It may not even have been a deep conversation, but they just said something one day that just a little light came on. But if you look back at what their position in the world, be like, yeah, it was my 10th grade gym coach. If you ask the average person on the planet, how important or significant is a 10th grade gym coach in society, they're probably not going to rank them very high. But that was the person, that was the encounter, that was the word that sparked something in you that helped change the trajectory of the life that you live to now. You know, that junior choir director when you were 9.
We've
You're
all
like,
heard the stories.
you know what I mean? Good.
No, I said I'm sure you've heard the stories, but I said I've heard a ton of stories like that. That
Yeah.
person that kind of changed their outlook. That's actually a really great example on how the system works.
Yeah. It tells you that, like I said, the youth choir director is not very significant in the grand scheme of society, in capitalism, in status and placement. Oh, you just the youth choir director. But that 9-year-old who found their voice and found their confidence and
Mhm.
found their ability to stand up and stand out, and that gave them that extra little push. Now
Mhm.
they're running some $1 million company because of
Mhm.
that one encounter that they had as a ninth grade, tenor, and that choir director gave them just that little extra support.
Yeah.
So for us, when we think that what we're doing is not valuable, or that the life that we're living is not valid because it doesn't show up on Forbes, it's like I said, it's just not true. And
Mhm.
everything that we're doing is impactful to all those around us, even if we can't even if there's no grade, there's no credit score, there's no salary for it.
Mhm. Mhm. And you work with a lot of people around, when you're coaching. You work with them around just kind of the self awareness without
Yeah.
judgment. Because you're really good in analogies. What does it look like for someone that, because they're not getting the validation outside,
No.
what does it look like for them to go through the motions of life, you think, from your experience?
So a big thing that shows up, if you don't feel like you've been validated, that your voice has been heard, or that your presence has meaning, uh, what can happen is that when you're going through things, you almost have to check to see if it's real. So even when it comes to dealing with problematic people, I like to refer to them as. I mean, every couple of years there's a new term. They call them narcissists. They call them toxic. They call every couple of years there's a new terminology for people. I just call them problematic. So if you're dealing with a problematic person, they can put you in that can have you in a position of believing that no, they're not. It's me. Like their gaslighting techniques, their narcissistic behavior, their abusive tones and rhetoric, their all the things that they do, which makes them problematic. If you don't feel validated in the sense of your existence here, you'll take stuff and then question if it's you that's wrong. Like you can find yourself in an abusive relationship and everything about you is saying this isn't okay, but because you feel like your voice has never been validated in life, either A, you don't speak up when there's something about this being wrong, or B, part of you feels like, no, I must deserve it because I have to be wrong because I'm never right. Like it can't be, I can't be on the right side of this because I'm always on the wrong side of everything. And so the way our boss speaks to us, the abusive mate we can find ourselves in, just constantly, even the manipulation of people who actually may love us, but I really need to sleep. But you can't just come by and help me. Okay. I down to my last dollar. I know I'm gonna pay bills, but you just can't help me. You can't float me a little.
That's
Okay. You know what I mean? And we'll find ourselves in those situations because we don't feel like our voice is valid. We don't feel like our position or our concerns are valid. And if we feel a need to challenge it, like I said, because we've always been thought that we're wrong, then we'll just start. Well, we can find ourselves in problematic situations dealing with those problematic people.
yeah, that's really good. And for people that want to, what would you say to people? Because, in order to go in the direction that you want to go, we talked about being in these systems where they may not be in alignment with like our values or once we realize who we are.
Yeah.
How does someone stay kind of grounded in their values and who they are? Like, what kind of things would you tell like your coaching clients as they're going through a lot of transition? With self-awareness, it's a transition because like the example you gave is like, can you help me with this? And you're like, I'm tired. And then they still proceed to ask again.
Yeah.
When you're aware, you recognize like, dang, this is how people never really value me. Like
Yeah.
once you become aware, you get pissed off at them. And I'd be like, listen, Linda, you said it was okay.
Yeah, and for them, and this is why I don't put this on the other person, just for that example. If I'm known for saying something first, but I'm always gonna cave, everybody knows, we'll just ask Jermaine to do something. He's gonna say no at first, but he's gonna say yes on the third time. So can you do this? No, it's not a good time. You sure, man? You sure? Come on. Okay. If that's the pattern that everybody knows me for, after a while, I can't be mad at them for continuing to put because I've already established that I'm a 3 no yes. You know what I mean? That I'm a no yes guy. So they're only, human beings or creatures of habit, path of least resistance, lowest common denominator. Like we can figure out the pattern, and then comfortability is a snitch when we find ourselves into that comfortable pattern, and then that's how we operate. So to the person who's like, never again, like to the person who's like, okay, I've finally seen the light. The life that I'm living is not the life that I want. I've given 20 years to this life that I don't feel is working. I've given 30 years to this life that I don't feel I appreciate, like I don't want to be in. I've given 55 years to this life that I no longer want to live. Like there's no date to say when you want to change. And some of us get in this mindset of I'm too old to change, or I've been this way for so long. You can be 78 and all of a sudden decide, you know what? Nah, not no more. And actually, when we get older, it's kind of a sidebar. We do that anyway. We'll tell people that older people are like, oh, they don't have patience or they don't take no mess anymore because they learned, like, I got so many ticks left. I'm not playing with y'all. Like, grandma used to be so loving. Now grandma don't even stay on the phone with you. Okay, baby, I'm gonna come by and visit you. Nah, I just saw you yesterday. Why don't you try next week? Like, they'll be real selective about their time and their energy. They do what they want to do. You can change at whatever point you feel like you want to. You can always pivot. So if you find yourself in a place to where you're like, I want to do something different and I want to start making those changes, this is where you start building your fence where you're standing. And in the first thing is, this is my line of defense. Like, this is my little perimeter around me. Now, some of us, depending upon your level of awareness and assertiveness, imagine if you have a little house. I know the analogies. Some people have a house and then a fence is literally around the house. Like when you open the front door, you're staring at fence. And the more level of assertiveness and the more you are about boundaries, some people got maybe 10 feet a yard. Some people got 50 feet a yard. Some people got acres from the fence to the house. Like, that's going to change all levels based upon as you develop and grow with this. But the first thing is just start with your fence right outside the front door. This is my Rubicon, my point of no return. I am protecting my peace, my time, my energy, my whatever, because I want my life to be different. So right now, everybody gets no's. Like, we'll revisit this later. and I'll start moving that nose around. But as of right now, line in the sand, everybody get. I don't have an extra dollar. I don't have an extra minute. I don't have an extra piece of essence or aura. I don't have, and then let me get my footing. Let me get it. It sounds cold for some people. This is just one of the examples. So if you're two people out, if you're swimming and both of you start drowning, but neither one of you is near the boat or the inner tube, you almost have to let the other person start to go under before you get the proper equipment to then come back and get them. It feels bad, but if you're going under and the other person is going under and you get lock arms with them, you're both going to drown. That's why the airplane, they tell you put your mask on first before you put on the mask of somebody else. You need to get your floaty on. You need to get your mask on. And it doesn't mean you don't care about the person sitting next to you or you don't care about the other person who's taking on water. But if you do not do that, you're trying to help the person put the mask on 2 seats over. Now you pass out and their mask still isn't on. You're trying to help them out there swimming. They're pulling you under. You're pulling them under. You both go under. You have to appreciate that I need to get my footing and get my bearings. And if we have kids, we have jobs, we can't isolate everybody, but we have to start minimizing and get as much footing as we possibly can. That's that first group of people. That makes sense?
It makes a lot of sense. It
Yeah.
makes a lot of sense.
For the other people who may not be as extreme, like they don't have to just dig the moat and pull up the drawbridge. If you realize that you want to start doing, maybe you've been eating the fried Twinkies and fried Oreos for breakfast right along with everybody, and then you decide about to be about this broccoli life. You decided that you're trying to get your cauliflower on. Then it's gonna be okay. I would love to sit and eat my broccoli next to y'all while y'all eat fried Oreos. That's the first option, But if not, I'm willing to eat them by myself. And in doing that, sitting next to you, you may get somebody else who looks over at your plate and says, that don't smell too bad. You may still be able to stay within community as you make your adjustments. Like the first group's going to have to isolate depending upon where they are in their lives. And that's where you take the self-awareness and the self-check to see, are you in an environment that you can still operate within them? Some folks, you may just have to, like I said, fill up the moat and pull up the drawbridge, and you're just going to have to break team. But for the other ones who still have, they're not so problematic. You just have different ideologies, but they're still cool. Then those are people who you can sit right next to them and eat your vegetables. They'll look over at your plate. They may kind of smirk or make jokes, but y'all can still, you can start to make the adjustments. You can go back to school and still hang out. I got school. You going back to school? Well, good luck. Wouldn't be me, but whatever. You can laugh and joke, but you go to class and some of them may help you study. Like you can still stay. The important part about all this is that being able to stop and say, what the taking stock in our life. Is this the type of life I want to live? Is this the space I want to live in? Because here's the important part about the space is though who you are now in the space that you're in, that's who's making the decisions for the future you. So if you think about where am I going to end up on this road, the space that you're in right now is the driver. So when you look around 20 miles down the road at where you are, this is who's been behind the wheel. So if you're not in a good, healthy space where you're making decisions with room to breathe, where it's not constantly feeling like you're under scrutiny, anxiety, you feel frantic, you feel everything is against you. It's the difference of going grocery shopping when you're starving versus when you eat regularly. Your refrigerator is going to look a lot different between those two people. If you're in the driver's seat and you constantly feel anxiety, you feel unsure, you feel unvalidated, you feel unimportant or insignificant, where that person's going to drive versus the one who's figured out where they want to be or at least where they don't want to be, who's got themselves in a position to where I feel good about myself and confident about the decisions I make, where that car is going to end up, it's going to be a completely different location. That makes sense?
Yeah, it makes a lot of sense.
Yeah. So when we're doing the things for looking at what's the space that I'm in, because this is the space that I'm making my decisions from.
And I think that, like you said, who we are today or what we're doing today can reflect what's going to happen down the road.
Yeah.
To keep ourselves motivated to celebrate those moments of growth when you are able to like still eat what you wanted to eat despite what everyone else is eating, even though it was one meal, it's better than nothing,
Yeah.
right? So I think just learning, and I don't think we are taught to celebrate moments as much as destinations.
Yeah.
So I think if we can like celebrate those moments, it can be extremely beneficial. Um, you said people get mad at I mean, I said people get mad at the other person. I just wanted to tell you one of the common things people say when they're learning. Let's just use the example of, but I'm tired, I don't want to go.
Yeah.
People will say, but I wouldn't do that. Do you hear that a lot? Like they'll get mad if you're saying, Celeste, come on, I need your help, and I'm like, I'm tired, and then you keep going, and then I eventually cave in. I'll
Yeah.
be mad at you for continuing to ask me, because I would never do that to you if you said you were tired.
Yeah, that's so you can't hold people accountable for crossing boundaries that you do not set.
Ooh, that's a hard one, but we
Yeah,
got
so
it.
I can't be mad at you for crossing the line that I never drew. So so
That statement alone can release a lot of anger that people are struggling with right now. Go ahead.
yeah, yeah, but that's where a lot of that, but that's why I said it's in-house, it's internal. I'm mad at you. Well, I wouldn't make you feel this way. I wouldn't pressure you. Yes, because the first time you asked, they said no, and you know they meant it. Like that, it's not you wouldn't do it to them. They wouldn't allow you to do it to them. That's why it wouldn't go both ways.
Right.
It's
It's what you allow. That's
yeah,
like the hardest conversations I have to have with people. And I'm intentionally like when they're even if they say it in passing, like, yeah, and this person made me. I said, actually, it could be a text. I was like, actually, you're gonna allow it. They'd be like, dang, you're right. Just that one little change in making me into you allowed, you start to be like, oh my goodness, I'm the one with the power. I think it really changes your mindset when you start to switch it up that way.
oh, it's huge. It's okay. So sidebar. So years ago I used to work as a bouncer in a nightclub, and our job was to let you ever been to a club? You go to the line, hey man, you can't get in here with them shoes. You can't,
Right, right, right.
whatever. Um, we had guys who ran a club who would say, we need our ratio, male to female. We need whatever. So um, do whatever you need to do with this line, but I know what it better look like in there. So you're literally saying like you almost coming up with garbage reasons to not have certain people come in.
All these years, this is what was going on. I
It's
had
tough.
no
Yeah,
idea.
we got too many dudes up in here. We got too many dudes in here. We need to switch this ratio up. Do not let no more men in here until you get X amount of women. So it's like, I'm just supposed to create these people out of the sky? Like, what am I? We need, the room is all right. We don't need none of that. We need this. Hey, we want a certain look. I need more dress shirts, less polo shirts. I need more, like whatever this that they need for their building. There's like, I don't care what you do, just make sure. But when I walk through this building, I better not see A, B, and C. So you come up with whatever you need to come up with at the door. It's just as a little sidebar for some of y'all who don't know how to
Well,
gang
you
up.
just answered a lot of questions for people because I feel like one week it was fine and next week it's not fine.
Yeah, yeah. Well,
Oh,
we ain't letting eyebrows in this weekend.
it
Yeah,
makes
just
sense.
if I see some more eyebrows in here, you fired. So when it so when it comes to making those what you allow, what you've allowed in here, you can make every excuse for why something is, but he was nice or he was this. They only got in the club because you let them. Like you could say whatever, they would seem nice, they gave you some money, they promised they were gonna wash your car, they said whatever, they just said whatever they wanted to say. Ultimately, you are the one that let them through the rope. So all this, he made me, she made me, they made us this, you let them shoes in. You let them shirts in. You let them dudes in. Get mad at them if you want to, but you was the one holding the rope.
Yeah.
And when we look at it like, I let all these folks in the club. And just take responsibility that everybody who's in your club right now, you lifted the rope for them.
Yeah.
Nobody snuck in. Nobody came through the roof or
No.
through the grates. Nobody climbed up through the sink in the bathroom. You let everybody who's in your club right now in. So when we have that level of accountability, we take the whole, it's not even about you.
It's not.
So now now think of the premise of the guys who's standing in front of the club. They look at you like this ain't about you.
Yeah.
No, no, man, no Tims, no baggy jeans, no polo shirt, no stripes, no eyebrows. And they look through you because you are irrelevant because it is not about you.
Right.
And when we think about those people who we think is problematic in our lives, it's not about them.
It's not.
They didn't make us do anything.
Mhm.
We lifted the rope for them. We let them in the club, and now they're wrecking shop. So, they acting a fool. They jumping on couches. They popping bottles. So we have to accept the fact that we let them in.
We do. Yeah, and I promise it's a game changer. I also promise that it is hard to accept, especially when you've been wronged, right?
Yeah.
So it's really hard to say that out loud. But it changes the energy
Yes.
of what you're doing. It's hard when you're feeling so much weight when you think you don't have control over anything in your life. And little by little, I've watched so many people transform and shift their thought process and I'm always like, you didn't hit the lottery, you didn't get a new house, you shifted your thought process. And I was like, yeah, nothing, like nothing in their external world changed,
You got the
but
same
everything,
parents,
yeah, same,
same
everything
baby
in there,
mama,
same trauma,
same.
everything internally shifted. Like it's so powerful for that to happen. And we don't talk enough about the power we have, which is why I'm constantly giving out messages to help you see it, because it's really, we don't really learn about life this way.
Yeah.
So being able to understand that if you're struggling with validation, let's say you've become extremely self-aware, but the validation isn't happening, like that shouldn't be a game changer in what you're trying to do,
Yeah. Yeah.
right?
Because that's not the motivation. We're not trying to be in alignment with our truest self for public praise. It's trying to be in alignment with ourselves so we can be okay. Like, so we can operate from a healthy space that we're making decisions for us that's not coming as a trauma response or as a coping mechanism or all these things. I'm actually just breathing and living. I'm not gasping for air because I've been holding my breath for 2 minutes. Like I just, and that whole, and for some people who think differently, where they're just like, I can't, um, you're just talking theory. Like I can't take these emotions and make them real. Everything that would you rather have your heart surgeon going through a bitter divorce? They just repoed his car. He just got news that his son flunked out of school 5 minutes before he performed surgery on you.
Mm-mm. No.
You know what I'm saying? Like, why? Well, he's a surgeon. He's skilled. His emotional state shouldn't make a difference in his ability to do his job. Oh, no. I want the guy who's just had the best day ever, coming off of back-to-back phenomenal surgeries.
Yeah.
He's got a happy home situation. All is right with the world, and he's coming in to help save my life. The difference in our mindset and our perception of how we see the world and ourselves in it drastically affects the way we do in everything that we're doing. So if you're like, if you think that I don't have time for me because I've got to do all this, we almost have to taking care of ourselves. We have to prioritize that like we prioritize food. Taking
Mhm.
care of ourselves cannot be optional. It can't be secondary.
Mhm.
So if we look at making time for ourselves the way we look at food, if you say, well, I don't have time to eat because I've got A, B, and C to do. Okay, you may be able to get through a day of that. You may even get through two. But it is a matter of time before this whole situation shuts down because you've been starving.
Mhm.
And when you pass out physically from not eating, there is a mental and emotional version of that happens when we don't take care of ourselves.
Mhm.
That's when we get overwhelmed, we get stressed out, we get frantic, panicky, argumentative, we're just rattled. That's the mental and emotional version of passing out from not eating. So taking the time to take care of ourselves has to be prioritized just up there with food and water.
Yes.
It's going to dictate everything else we do.
Mhm.
And so it's going to be hard to be living a life that we feel fulfilled and we feel happy and we feel at peace when we are not taking the time for ourselves and showing like, no, time for me is worth, like, I'm worth
Yeah.
healing.
Yeah.
Like my time to make sure that I'm me eating this broccoli is what I need for me. I
Mhm.
can't survive off the fried Oreos.
Mhm.
Like I need the broccoli. And everybody else is telling you, get these Twinkies. Nah, I need this for me.
Yeah.
I need to not be around you, or I need to be around them, or I need to go back to school. I need to, whatever it is that you've decided that you want to do differently in your life. It has to be prioritized, that even if I can't put a score to it or a grade to it or a
Yes.
dollar amount to it,
Yes.
this is important to me,
Yeah.
and it's worth it.
Mhm.
Uh,
I love that. That's a great way to kind of end this conversation. I do think it's worth it, and it comes with a emotional roller coaster, like we talked about. But one thing I'll say for people that may struggle with that emotional roller coaster of change is remembering your why,
yeah,
your commitment, or the fact that it's worth it, or the fact that whatever that goal is, and it does not going to look the same for everyone.
yeah,
You have to be able to identify that. And I think when we identify that, when it gets hard, we can lean on to where we're trying to go.
definitely,
Um, y-
definitely, yeah,
yeah, I think that would be good.
yeah.
This
So
was
all y'all
good.
out there chugging along, just keep going.
Yeah.
You'll eat your broccoli alone for a minute, but eventually you'll find some other broccoli eaters.
Yeah. I definitely was. I felt like a lone wolf on this journey of in my professional world, and not that needed outside validation, but I get a lot of it now. But it wasn't a way that I started. It wasn't like people were like, "Oh my gosh, you're doing great work." But I,
Yeah, it's in our community a lot. Yeah, it's a thing.
yeah,
More, I would say this: the last couple years, there's been a higher appreciation for the
this,
need
yeah.
for
Oh,
mental
now,
health and
oh
all that
yeah.
stuff. But yeah,
Catch me at 2013, 14. It was like, nah, I don't speak that language.
I ain't getting on your couch.
Yeah, but I was committed. I was very committed, and so yeah. So the outside validation is nice, but it definitely wasn't the driving force,
Yeah,
and not that I got it, even if it would have been. The driving force was like my commitment to my goals, and just
no,
somebody that wants to work with community and help people like that. So like that was my why. And without the validation from family or friends, like it was just something that I knew where I was going. So so just that's the one way you can help yourself stay focused.
definitely, definitely.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Tell people how they can reach you.
Easiest way, if any information, questions about the disc assessment or the program, the email easiest. Team effort program, TEAMEFFORT team effort program at gmail.com. And every social media platform is the same. It's at J Morris CEO.
Sounds good. Thank you so much. You are very appreciated.
Oh, thank you. My favorite person in mental health. I always appreciate doing this with you.
Thank you. See